Hi, it's Ike from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got another book on tape to play for you. Today book is Gabby Bear Tell a Story, Fooly the Unfoxyest Fox for 1985. So let's get started.
Hi, I'm Gabby Bear. I'm sure glad you turned my magic button because now I can tell you a fun and exciting story. And at the same time, I'd like to be your very special friend. Every time you hear this tone, it means it's time to turn the page in your storybook so you can read along with me. Right now, I'm going to tell you a story full of adventure about my friend, Fooly Fox. Fooly got his name because, well, there was a time in his life when he, wasn't clever or foxy. Are you ready for my story? Here goes. Now, most foxes are known for being cunning and downright crafty. But Fooly Fox went through a period in his life that was pretty mixed up. That is, he didn't know how to be a fox. For instance, most foxes live in holes in the ground they call a den. But Fooly, he lived in a bird's nest up in a tree. And Fooly did some foolish things that a fox shouldn't do. Why, for a time, he didn't have the smarts to stay away from Farmer Grumble's place. And everybody knows Grumbles doesn't like foxes. One time I discovered Fooly sleeping in Farmer Grumble's chicken coop. Imagine that. Fooly told me once how he felt about himself.
I am what I am, and even if I'm wrong, I don't mind, 'cause I don't know what's right.
I didn't know what to make of Fooly. I mean, he's a great guy, but not very many of the other animals had anything to do with him. Just between you and me, deep down inside, I knew Fooly was unhappy. However, something happened that turned Fooly's world around. One day, Fooly was sleeping up in his tree nest. He woke up slowly, as usual, and stretched. He stretched so far, he didn't realize he was hanging halfway out of his nest. Well, you probably guessed it. Fooly Fox fell right out of the tree. He didn't get hurt, and as a matter of fact, you could almost call it a good fall. Because when Fooly stood up, he found himself standing smack dab in front of Fox and Fox. You see, Fox and Fox was the fairest young lady fox in the woods, and there wasn't a self-respecting fox around that didn't want to befriend Foxanne, Fooly included. When Fooly's eyes met Foxanne's, it didn't take a genius to know Cupid had shot an arrow right into Fooly's heart. Fooly may have been an unfoxy fox, but that sure didn't interfere with his warm heart. Fooly said to Foxanne,
Roxanne, would you consider being my friend?
Now, Foxanne was not just pretty, she was also very nice. Secretly, she liked Fooly, but she could not be his friend. Her father wouldn't allow it. She told Fooly,
My father said you must learn something very important before you can be my friend.
When Fooly asked Foxanne what it was he should learn, her answer confused Fooly. She told him he must figure that out for himself. If not, he wouldn't be learning anything. And with that, Foxanne pranced off into the woods. Fooly really yearned for the young lady's friendship. He came to me for advice, asking me what it was he had to learn in order to please Foxanne's father. Unfortunately, I didn't know what Fooly had to learn. I talked it over with Willie Goat, the world's first unigoat, and my good buddy. But he didn't have an answer either. Then I got an idea. I decided right then and there I was going to enroll Fooly Fox in People's School. There he might learn what Foxanne's father wanted him to know. It sounded like such a good idea, I wrote a song about it. It went like this. Fooly knew I wasn't foolin' when I told him he needed schoolin'. It could make him very smart, so in life he'd have a new start. Well, we dressed Fooly up in kid's clothes so no one would know he was a fox. Fooly wasn't too excited about wearing people clothes, but if it meant winning Foxanne's friendship, he figured it was worth it. The biggest problem we had was keeping Fooly's tail tucked down in the back of his pants. We snuck Fooly into the classroom, and nobody noticed he was a fox. The teacher, Mrs. Plumwhistle, was a good lady, and the kids liked her. They gave her plums every morning instead of apples. Anyway, Willie and I peeked through a window and watched Fooly as he studied. Mrs. Plumwhistle was giving a history lesson. I had a hunch that history lessons were not going to give Fooly the information he needed. Willie agreed when he said,
Guess we'll have to wait and see what the next subject is.
As we did, something awful happened. Fooly's tail popped out from the back of his pants. All the kids saw it. They began to laugh out loud, having the time of their lives. They weren't really laughing at Fooly. They just thought he was kind of cute and surely different. But Mrs. Plumwhistle wasn't as happy as the kids. When she saw Fooly, she let out a shriek that made Willie and me hold our ears. Mrs. Plumwhistle ran out of the classroom, screaming for the principal. The students, however, were having a ball with their newfound classmate, Fooly. Tired of being the main attraction, Fooly Fox sprinted out of the classroom. Willie, Fooly, and I went back into the woods before the principal could find us. Fooly had tears in his eyes when he exclaimed to me,
I didn't learn a thing in people's school about what I need to know, whatever it is. I'll never get to be friends with Foxanne.
Before I could tell Fooly that Gabby Bear never gives up on anything or anybody, he ran off. I knew Willie and I had to find Fooly Fox. He may have been mixed up in life, but he had a lot of good in him just the same. Willie and I searched high and low for Fooly Fox, but couldn't find him anywhere. Guess he was hiding out, feeling pretty low. Then Willie remembered how Fooly liked to keep company with chickens. Willie thoughtfully said,
Fooly's probably hiding out with Farmer Grumble's chickens. They're his friends.
I agreed with Willie, so we snuck onto Grumble's farm. Willie and I peeked into the chicken coop, and sure enough, there was Fooly. Willie and I had to laugh, because Fooly was playing checkers with a rooster. Yeah, that's right, a big old fluffy feathered rooster. And as Fooly's luck usually goes, the rooster won. Now, I took Fooly aside and tried to explain to him that foxes don't belong with chickens. It just isn't the way of things. Fooly was confused about that, and he said,
But chickens are my best friends. They're the only ones that don't laugh at me. And they don't care if I'm not clever.
Fooly was right. In fact, the chickens were real glad that Fooly wasn't a typical hungry fox. Well, I decided that Willie Goat, Fooly Fox, and myself should leave the farm before Grumbles found us. We kept our heads down, sneaking along a fence as we left the chicken coop area. Unfortunately, we rounded a corner and ran headlong into Bully Goat, who was munching on some grass. One look at Willie is all it took for Bully Goat to rear up and charge. Bang! The goat's horns rammed together, and the battle was on between Willie and Bully. Fooly watched wide-eyed as Willie and Bully went at it for all they were worth. Willie had to work twice as hard knocking Bully because he only had his one horn. Then, to make matters worse, Farmer Grumbles came running out of the barn when he heard the commotion. He shouted out,
Gabby Bear, Willie Goat, and Fooly Fox, I'm gonna put all of you in butter churners for causing trouble on my farm.
That's all we needed to hear. Willie, Fooly, and I took off with our heels kicking. Farmer Grumbles and Bully chased us, mad as they could be. Willie, Fooly, and I ran past Grumbles' water well. When Grumbles approached it, Bully was at his side. One of Bully Goat's horns accidentally hit the crank handle on the well. The handle swung around and hit Grumbles, knocking him into the well. Willie, Fooly, and I stopped at the edge of the farm and looked back when we heard a big splash. Farmer Grumbles yelled at the top of his lungs from down in the well.
Bully, you're the clumsiest goat I've ever had. Now get me out of here.
We left quickly when Bully put the crank handle in his mouth and began to reel an angry Farmer Grumbles out of the well. It wasn't too much longer after that when I figured out what Fox Ann's father wanted Fooly to learn. But I wasn't gonna tell Fooly, because, like Fox Ann said, if you just tell Fooly the answer, he wouldn't learn anything for himself. So instead, I told Willie to help me dig a foxhole for Fooly Fox. Willie used his rainbow horn to dig. I used my paws. Fooly watched us, confused. He scratched his head when he commented,
What in the world are you guys doing? Since when do bears and goats need a foxhole?
I explained to Fooly that the foxhole was for him and Fox Ann. Willie said it best.
Yeah, we gotta make it big enough for two. Lovebirds have to have some space.
By this time, Fooly's head was spinning with questions that needed answers. It was then that I told him to go visit Fox Ann's father. And while he was on his way there, Fooly should think about all the things that have happened to him and the way he's been living. The thought of visiting Fox Ann's father worried Fooly, but I assured him there was nothing to be afraid of. Nature told me that Fox Ann's father would help Fooly with what he had to learn in order to befriend the fair young lady. Thinking about how much he liked Fox Ann, Fooly mustered up his courage and headed out to meet her father. Fooly arrived at Fox Ann's foxhole. He was feeling a bit weak in the knees, and butterflies were busy tickling his tummy. But he knew what he had to do, so Fooly knocked on Fox Ann's door. A big, burly fox answered the door. It was Fox Ann's father. Fooly looked timidly at Fox Ann's father. The father eyed Fooly with a cool glance. He said,
So you're Fooly Fox, huh? I understand you want to be friends with my daughter. Is that so?
Fooly swallowed hard, trying to think of a clever answer. Finally, he muttered,
Yes, sir. I want Fox Ann to be my friend.
Well, Fox Ann's father wasn't as rugged as he looked. He put his hand on Fooly's shoulder and smiled warmly. He said to Fooly,
So you're the one who lives in a bird's nest instead of a foxhole, plays with chickens and hangs around Farmer Grumble's place.
With that, Fox Ann's father picked up Fooly by the rear paws and held him upside down. He then asked Fooly how the world looked at that angle. Fooly could only say,
Upside down, sir.
Fox Ann's father put Fooly down and asked him if he understood what Fox Ann's father was trying to teach him. It suddenly hit little Fooly like a rainstorm in July. The answer to his problem was right in front of him all the time. Fooly proudly told Fox Ann's father,
I should be what I was meant to be. I had everything upside down. Now I know who I am.
Fox Ann's father smiled from ear to ear when he told Fooly he was right. That's what he wanted Fooly to learn. Now he would allow Fooly to be Fox Ann's friend. Fooly let out a yell that could be heard for miles.
Yahoo! Yippee! I'm gonna be with Fox Ann. And now I'm no longer an unfoxy fox.
About that time, Fox Ann approached wearing a pretty smile, and with his little heart pounding, Fooly took her by the hand and the two went off together to be friends. Well, that's my story about Fooly Fox. He's my neighbor now, only he lives in a foxhole instead of a bird's nest, and he sees Fox Ann quite often. So it's goodbye for now. I hope you had a good time. I sure did. And remember, the next time you want to hear a fun and exciting story from Gabby Bear, just turn my magic button.
So that was Gabby Bear tell a story, Fooly the Unfoxy Fox from 1985. So please like, subscribe, share, and comment, and have a groovy day. And our next book will be Gabby Bear tells a story, Bandit the Outrageous Raccoon.